close to finishing this thing up. Probably going to do 2 more videos after this. One will be bleeding the brakes, and then one final one just going over some general tips and tricks all throughout the bike. But today we're going to focus on the front end alignment. And if you watched the earlier video, you remember I whacked out, I messed up my tie rods, I turned this heim out, messed up the camber. So things are, this side, the camber probably is okay, but I'm going to reset things. The main thing is, if you watched the earlier video as well, I set the tie rods when I install them to the same length, or really close. So whenever I make an adjustment to one side, I'm making the adjustment to the other side, and that keeps everything straight. If you end up with one tie rod longer than the other, it should be out of line when you're steering, when your handlebars are straight. But if not, if it's even slightly off, it's probably going to pull one way or another. You need a few tools for this. Tape measure for the toe. I use a 3/4 for the tie rod lock nut, a 17 to hold the tie rod end if I need to, and that's to keep everything straight and in line as I'm tightening down those lock nuts. And then a 10mm for the turnbuckle, the slots on the tie rod themselves. If they're free, a lot of times you don't even need this. And then a framing square. Framing square makes it really easy to check your camber. These arms are fixed for caster, your front to back for your steering. So I don't have to mess with that. So, and then, oh yeah, and a jack. Either a jack or someone else to lift up on the front so you can pull that. You gotta, to adjust the camber, you're gonna have to pull the kingpin out or the ball joint, whatever it is, and that's why you never tighten those down. Keep them loose. So, you probably can't see it in the video, but we got some serious camel toe going on here. It's way in. So what I want to do is I want to shorten the tie rod to bring the front of the tire out. So this sometimes can be tricky. You gotta look at the way your threads are going, and I use the flat spots on the tie rod as my marking point, so I know how much I'm turning. So as I'm turning, I got half of 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. That looks like a good starting point. This one looks like it's in a pretty good position. Now we'll go to the other side. So we're at 4. So now we're going to do the same thing here. This one's going to be opposite turn. Half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. Okay. So now once I get my tires fairly straight, now I'm going to move over to adjusting the camber. And to adjust the camber, I already know this is out. Basically what you want to do is you take your square, put it on the ground, and we should have a 1/4 inch in. And you can't see it here, but I'm actually out. I'm facing this way. I've got probably a 1/2 inch on the bottom. So we've got to turn that in a decent amount. So I'm going to lift up on the front end. Just get it off the ground. Take my nut off my kingpin. And then I'll be able to pull the pin out. So because we're that way, I need to take this in quite a bit. And I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to, I know it's got to go in quite a bit. I don't have a mark on here from before. Let's go with that. Pin back in. And then I'll just put the nut on. Kind of keep it in place. Now the other thing is you're supposed to do all these adjustments at ride height, which means you sitting on the machine. Obviously I can't do that because there's nobody else here to even sit on the machine for me, and always make sure your handlebars are straight. And I'm sure you can go get really technical and measure like from the end of your bars down to your axle and all that stuff. I'm not that crazy, so I just eyeball it. So now I'll take my square again. So now we're looking better. So, and what I'd like to do, because that's supposed to be at ride height, you don't want your shock to be fully extended. Push it down. Let it settle. Because as you push down on the quad, as the shocks compress, that's why you have that camber, because the camber, the tires will push out. And the goal there is to have the ideal hatch placement when you're riding like hard cornering and stuff. So now I can take my square, I'm going to measure from sidewall. Sometimes, depending on your tape measure, sometimes they're blocked. So I have this little 6-inch precision. I use this for other stuff, but it works great here. So I'm at about about 7/16, just under ½ inch. Ideally, you want 1/4 inch. So now I'm going to check this side. This is actually pretty close, just over 7/16. So because I'm not sitting on the bike, I can actually go a little bit bigger. So if I was shooting for that 1/4 inch, probably 3/8 would be ideal, because if I was sitting on this, it would actually push those out a little bit farther. So I think it's probably pretty good where it's at. You don't need crazy aggressive camber. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to match the other side. Let's see what happens when I turn this out one. By the way, if you need a good jack, Pro Eagle is the way to go. Especially if you have any lifted vehicles. Thing is awesome. I have 37-inch tires on my Jeep, and the lift part, you can either use the flat or has the extension, or the extension actually goes up even higher. So it's pretty awesome. A little pricey, but the other thing is the big tires. You know, jacks are kind of a pain. So the big tires let it roll around much easier on anything. You roll around the dirt. Try that with one of those little mini tire jacks. Good luck. Alright, so get this one back in. It's the same process whether you have ball joints or Heims or whatever. Let it down. Make sure the wheels are straight. I think what's most important is that you're even on each side. See, that went way too much. Took me down to 3/16. No good. Being even on each side is more important than the precise measurement. You probably won't notice it riding if it's off, but maybe a pro would. So I'm going to turn this back in because I want to lean that in again. I'm just going to leave it where it was. It was pretty close. I think it was less than a 16th, so I should have left it alone. Some of the guys back in the day used to run this crazy camber. When you see 250Rs, I mean, the top of their tires were tipped in so far. It's kind of crazy. Really no need for it. I don't really know what their logic was. Set that. Oh, we should do this after. All right. So now we should be back to where we were. Pretty good. I'm going to leave it there. Okay, so now we've got our camber set. So the other thing you want to do is make sure your heims are turned, centered, because you will get binding if they're tipped back, tipped forward, and tightened down. And that's what you really have to pay attention to when you tighten down this lock nut, because it'll want to turn on you. So usually what I do is I get a wrench and put it on the flat spot of the heim, and as I'm turning, just kind of keep that straight. Same goes with your tie rods. You want to make sure everything's seated, everything's in a line, straight, and good to go. All right, so we're done with the jack, and now we can go to the toe. I probably should have left the exhaust off because it's a little bit hard. It gets in the way on the 250R. This is always easier with two people, especially depending on your tires. Now, luckily, these Obors have a center groove, so I can stay locked onto it. But you want to measure the center to center. So right now I'm at 41 3/4 on the rear. And then I'm going to do the same measurement on the front. I'm going to go to the middle of the tire, front and back, close to the middle as you can. And ideally, you want the front to be angled in about an 1/8 inch. So that measurement should be an 1/8 inch less. Right now I'm at 42 in the front. I've got 41 3/4 in the rear, 42 in the front. So that means I'm still out. And I think it's probably better to be slightly in more than an 1/8 inch than to be out at all. It just doesn't. You're going to get. There's a guy on the groups the other day that was having all kind of issues and was trying to figure it out. So I'm going to turn this. I'm just going to go a half turn. So I'm going to go a half turn here, and that. See, now I'm seeing my tie rod end is starting to turn on me. So I'm going to get my 17 and straighten that out, because I want that to stay in position, nice and straight. And this is where you may need the 10 to turn the turnbuckle area, and then the other one to keep that ball joint in place. Sometimes they get a little tight. Alright, so we got that half turn. Now we'll do a half turn over here. You have to make sure we go the opposite way. There's our half turn. And now we'll just do the same measurement again. So middle to middle. Alright, so now we're at 41 1/2. And we're at, oh, I went the wrong way. We're at 42 1/4. Should have done the other way. Okay, so this one, I want to turn the opposite way now. So we're going to go back the half turn, and then go the half turn the other way. Turn. be a little tedious. That's why it's nice to have another person adjusting the side. Alright. 41 3/4 again. And then 41 3/4. Alright, so we're about even. You know, you got a little wiggle room in the groove there, so it's alright. Alright, so I still want to angle them in, but I know a half turn's too much. So I'm just going to do a quarter turn in, so I got to turn it out. Quarter turn. And quarter turn. This should get it right on. It's good enough for government work. So we got about 41 7/8. And 41, still around 3/4, somewhere around there. I'm going to leave it there. I think it's good. So now you just make sure your ball joints are all straight. And both sides, and then you can take your 3/4, if these won't spin freely, and just snug them up so we're not moving. Usually you can do it by hand. And one other thing about tie rods, I haven't tightened these down yet. You can. Once the tie rods are in, and as long as they're equal length, you can tighten them down. There's two types of nuts for tie rods. You've got your nylocks, either a nylock or the other metal locking nut, and then you've got castle nuts. Every brand uses something different. I highly recommend, if you don't have castle nuts, to get them. I've actually had the nylock nut come loose on the hybrid on one of my tie rod ends, and it was tightened down. By the time I finished the race, it was hanging there literally by a thread. Had that gone out, could have been a very bad situation. So I feel much more comfortable running the castle nuts because then I can put a pin through it and not have to worry about it. At least it won't fall out. Even if it comes loose, it's not going to fall out. If it falls out, it's a bad deal. Gland Innovation sells castle nut upgrade kits. Comes with 4 castle nuts, washers, pins, everything you need. So, you know, again, keep that in mind, especially guys that don't check your nuts a lot. As far as pins and cotter pins, so my preference, wherever I can use them, and this is a very large one, is the hairpin. Versus the cotter pin, I like the hairpin because they're easier to remove and they're reusable. So if I need to make an adjustment at the track, I'm not trying to bend out cotter pins and dig them out. The hairpins, you get a mixed set like this with different sizes. This has 6 different sizes, and I use them wherever I can. You can't use them everywhere, but I use them on my wheel nuts. I use them where I can on my spindles, my tie rods, up in here. I use one on my steering stem, wherever. It's just my preference. Plus, I feel like overall the hairpins are stronger. And what some guys do, even in certain areas, like the hub nuts, is they'll use a zip tie on the end just to keep it locked in. I haven't done that. I've never had one come out, and that's whatever RPM the rear end is spinning at. Never had one come out, but I replace them every so often. But at least they're nice to have. So get a set of hairpins. Use them where you can. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't work, then resort to the cotter pin, and that's pretty much what I do. So our front end is now aligned. I'm going to lock everything down. let's talk about steering stabilizer. So, pretty much 2 steering stabilizers. Well, I guess there's 3, Elka, Precision, and CCP. I run CCP on all mine, just because when I got into this, I was trying to save some money. So I picked up a CCP, I think they're like 180 bucks on eBay, versus $500 or $600 for the Precision. And honestly, I've been running this since August, or no, the one I've been running since last January when I started racing. I have a Precision on my 450, and I know that has one is for steering, one is for straights. Honestly, I don't really notice a difference. So for me, I run the CCP. As far as how long they last, I've heard that the Precision don't have to be rebuilt as often. I haven't rebuilt any of mine yet, so I don't really know. But again, you're at $180 versus $500 or $600, depending which Precision you go with. And I don't know. I just do it that. Now with the Lone Star frame, I actually have to flip everything, because the mounts here, where it would mount, hits the gussets in the A-arm mounts, so it won't lock down properly. So I actually flip the arm, I flip the whole thing around, the mount, everything. I swap it all, and I can get it tucked down in the rear. The only thing I have to do was trim my louver fin just a little bit. So I have it, on the Lone Star frames, it's like that. On the OEM frame, it's fine. It mounts in the front, no problem. I think on the hybrid, I had to flip it as well. But your choice there. You get these guys that say, oh, Precision's the best. Well, just because something is $500 or $600 doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. I'm sure these are pretty easy to rebuild. If I need new seals, I can reach out to him, and I'm sure he'll send them to me. So, again, I do recommend a steering stabilizer regardless of what kind of riding you're doing. It's so nice. And a lot of times when you put a new stem in, if it's powdered, you're going to get a lot of tightness in the beginning because that powder thickness on your stem bushing. So it almost, for a while, until that wears out, it's going to feel like you have a stabilizer. But it's just, if you're woods riding or desert, dunes, you don't really need it as much, I'd say. But any other type of riding, you hit ruts and stuff, it can really throw you, mess up your wrist. So, play around with the settings on the stabilizer a little bit, but I highly recommend one. For, again, the CCP, 180 bucks on eBay, probably one of my better investments overall. Okay, so that's it for today. Like I said, the next one I'm going to do, we're going to bleed the brakes, and then I'm going to do just a walk around and show you some tips and tricks. I've got some new stuff I'm working on, cable management, and then I'm going to finish this thing up, and that'll be it until the big reveal. So don't think you're going to see it with the fenders until it's finished in the graphics. All right, guys, take it easy.